All right, so about a month ago, picked up the XT296 XT225 from a fellow up in Knoxville. Kind of lucked out with it being the 96 model because it's got the narrower cooling fans, which lets me mount the clutch cable holder on this side of the engine, because on the XT it's routed on the back side, so now I can use the stock TW clutch cable on it. Already, redid the other side of the engine, put a new clutch in it and a kickstart, but that's old news. Everybody knows how to do that anyways. But what I am doing now is I'm going to pull the flywheel off of the off this XT engine, because the big part of the swap is everything on this left hand side right here. So people say you don't need a special tool if you use an impact, so I'm going to bust out my handy dandy electric impact gun, and hopefully we get lucky and then we can take this apart. All right, so first thing we'll do is pop off this nut. There we go. All right. So a lot of people say you can use the rear axle. It's the same thread as your tool to remove the flywheel, but I'm not taking my rear wheel off yet. I don't have a spare axle, so I just went ahead and got this. Same thing, I'm gonna try using the impact, except this time I'm gonna try to tighten it and we'll see if it comes loose. All right, look at that. Oh, it pops off. All right, oh, let's be careful. What are we dropping? All right, what just fell? There it is right there. I got one pin. Don't fall inside the engine. 2 pins. Okay. Did not expect that to happen. So what these are is the pins that go inside here. As you can see, you've got a roller and a pin. All right. So hopefully I didn't lose anything else that goes inside here, but I think that's going to be all. Hopefully there's not a spring. Oh, there's the spring. All right, there's the spring right there. Okay, so I guess the word to the wise is when you're pulling this off, take it slow, because I am so glad that these did not fall down into this oil galley right there and end up in the bottom of the crankcase. I might have to order some new bolts. Now this piece right here, once I order some new bolts, will get bolted onto the TW flywheel. All right, so finally got these bolts in the mail to hold the starter clutch onto the flywheel. Just want to show you the big difference that I've noticed between the TW and the XT flywheels right here. If you look, the flywheel weight is a lot bigger and heavier on the TW than it is on the XT. And one thing that, the reading in the manuals it says to do after you put the bolts in and torque them down is to peen, the actual threads on the bolt down. And if you can look right here, you can see that little dimple, where this one was peened from the factory. This flywheel I got off of eBay, off of somebody parting out obviously they bought a 2020 and they were selling all the parts off of it. And if you look around all of these holes, you don't see anything at all resembling where it was peened. And after putting the bolts in there to kind of make sure that the threads were clean, it doesn't look like it's going to be possible to peen it down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some Loctite on them. They go medium strength glue on. What I've already done is I've already gone ahead and put the starter clutch together. Put some white lithium grease around it to kind of hold things together. And I've got this little cap that I bought a whole bunch of them just for working on different projects that fits perfectly in between there. So I'm going to use that to keep those dowels in place until I get it assembled. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over. I'm going to put this on top of here very carefully. All right, line up the holes. All right, you notice there's gonna be 2 sets of holes. There we go. All right, I'm gonna set this in here so those pins don't pop out. All right, so I've got my new bolts right here. All right. Alright, I got these all set in there in place for right now. Now I don't have the special clutch holder tool. I've already got my torque wrench set up to the right spec. I'm not going to tell you specs, you know, get a book, alright? Because I don't want you to think what I'm saying is gospel, alright? Get a book. So I don't have the clutch holder tool, so I'm going to try to do it this way, you know, with the strap wrench, and wish me luck. It doesn't feel good, like it's obviously it's not kind of clicked yet, but we'll see. Double check all these. That's a nice suit you got on. Hello, hello, hello. I see you wagging your tail. So I've got the 3 bolts in, torqued them down. These are the right bolts for the 2020 model. Okay, and you can see there's not really enough room to pin them down, whereas on this side you can see it. It's kind of, when these bolts were in here, you can see a little mark on there. They were actually flush with the top, so they peened them so they wouldn't spin out as an extra measure. So I'm not going to peen those in there because I don't think it's do a bit of good. I put Loctite on there. I'm just going to install it as is, and you know, it should work just fine, because it doesn't look like this one was peened, just had Loctite on it. On all my, you know, metal on metal surfaces, since the motor's not dry, but it hasn't been run in a while, and it's not going to be run for another few weeks. I'm going to put some white lithium grease. Now I got this. I'm going to pull my little plastic piece out of here. I'm going to very, very, very gently put this on here, because I don't know if y'all remember when I took it apart, shit went everywhere, and I don't want to have that happen again. So I'm putting it in here nice and easy. There we go. Oh. I can do it. Okay, you ready? There we go. There we go. We got it. Let's do it one more time just for good measure, okay? There we go. 36 foot-pounds. If you notice on the crankshaft and on the flywheel, there's a groove. This keyway needs to be in on the crankshaft, and then it lines up. This is a spare I have. No worries, there is one on there. I've got everything laid out, ready for the next step. This is where the output shaft rides, you know, because it sits out so much further. If you're using your existing one, you're gonna have to make a puller and pull the old bearing out, and then press the new one in. And if you don't have a press, I used a hammer and a socket. Then I put an old seal in it, and I packed some grease back behind there, and then I simply put on the keeper, the plate to hold everything in place. Over here, stator and all that goodness right there. Everything's already been bolted in, Loctited, and torqued to spec. The only thing I need to do is on these right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these out before I get ready to bolt it in, and put some black, you know, RTV silicone here to hold that together. Alright, so I've got the left side all set to go back together. First thing we're going to do though is install the output shaft extension. Alright, simply slides on there, seats all the way down, and then we've got 6 set screws that we put in. Alright, I'm going to put a dab of Loctite on all these and tighten them down. Alright, got set screws in there nice and tight, some blue Loctite on. Now we're going to put our gear on. Make sure the numbers are facing that way. All the way down. Grab our keeper.
twist it till it's right. And then, again, I'm going to put some blue Loctite on these bolts as well. Over here where the wires come out, I put a little bit of black RTV on it. All right, to slide that in there, and I'm going to finish putting this back together. This spins freely. Okay. Well, it turns freely. Here we are. I'm going to say about month 6 of planning, preparation, and acquiring parts for the XT225 swap into the TW200. First thing I'm going to say is, if you're planning on doing this, there's no cookie cutter plans, there's no parts list, there's no, direct take this and put it in. Every bike is unique and different. Rocky Mountain ATV, Partzilla, I spent countless hours bouncing back and forth on those 2 websites between different, bikes, researching part numbers to see what parts were on different models, just trying to find the parts to build the bike. I'm doing things a little bit differently than most folks are. Most folks have a blown TW200 and they're going to cannibalize off of that to do their 225 swap. Placer Loader on the TW200 forum, he sells the output shaft extension, makes this a lot simpler swap vice the way it had previously been done, where they had to modify the existing output shafts to fit with the XT220 or the 225 engine. First thing, got the bike, picked this up in June. About a little over about 4,200 miles on it, I think. Don't recall exactly, but got it to the house, got it running good, rode around for a few days, made sure it didn't make any noise, got it up to speed and temp more than once, shifted fine through all the gears, so I knew I had a good solid engine to start with. Then I tore it out. First thing I did was pull the right side apart, install the kickstart, put a new clutch in it and new clutch springs, slapped it back together. Now this was the more challenging side. Can't use the existing XT left side cover, you gotta use the TW. So surprisingly, the cheapest one I could find was a brand new one. And again, because I'm doing things a little bit differently, I have this engine runs great and I don't want to take it apart, I don't want to touch it. So I started with all fresh parts. Found a guy on eBay parting out looks like he bought a 2020 to part out. So I bought the flywheel and the stator from him, and good thing, because it came with all the little bracketry and everything needed. And when you take it apart, you'll see the little metal holders to hold the wires and everything in place. So I lucked out there, because some of that stuff you can't get. I got the motor and all the parts all painted up, looking good. Was definitely not going to reuse the original Phillips head screws that were on the XT engine. So got some stainless steel hardware off of eBay. Looks great, worked great. They're all Allen heads, so they felt really good, nice and tight going in. The box of bolts actually came with some instructions that said, hey, knock down your torque specs when using anti-seize. Some people don't ever change the torque specs. I looked on machinist forums, I looked at motorcycle forums, automotive forums, and sometimes 30%, 25% reduction of the torque value, because the anti-seize acts as a lubricant, so it's easier to tighten. The threads don't, they glide a little bit better, so it takes less to torque them to where you need them to be. Call me old school. I grew up using the old aluminum anti-seize that you pick up at the auto parts store. Had no idea there was even different variations until I started looking this stuff up, and I saw people talking about copper, zinc. So I did some research, and I found that for stainless steel and aluminum, my research led me to using the zinc anti-seize, which is what I used. Only time will tell how well that's going to work. Don't plan on having this apart anytime soon, but you never know. Maybe next year we'll be due for a sprocket change, and we'll see how easy everything comes apart. One other thing that I'll say, since I had everything apart, I didn't split the halves, but I did replace the shifter seal and the output shaft seal. I know you can't see it. I replaced all those. Didn't make any sense to have it apart and not to change those out. And now the next step is going to be to start pulling this apart. This right here, great running engine. It's only got about 3,700 miles on it. My plan is to pull it out, put it in a box. People agree to disagree on methods of long-term small engine storage. I'm not going to go into it, but my plan is to run the bike for a little bit, warm it up, drain and change the oil, run it a little bit to get that fresh oil flowing through it, shut her down, and I'm going to leave the oil in it when I pull the engine out. After I pull the tank, probably the spark plug, and the carburetor off, while the starting motor and electricals are still intact, is run some fogging oil through the intake and spray some down into the spark plug hole just to lubricate that cylinder. So while in storage, there's no chance for it to, get moisture or rust. Remember what size that back one was?